World Crisis Radio. So the plan is commandeer helicopter Ben's money. Commandeer helicopter Ben $600 billion to $1 trillion, redirect that as a very substantial down payment into the infrastructure program you need anyway for national survival. So part of the auspicious political constellation for this is the worldwide attack on helicopter Ben, practically an attack by name when it comes to this Brazilian finance minister Manteiga saying throwing money out of helicopters is not a good policy. Well, that's exactly what it is, except it's not just random throwing. It's lawns that are marked Pandit the Bandit, lawns that are marked in the name of Bank of America, Moynihan, I think his name is, or Diamond of J.P. Morgan, or Blank Fine, or Mac, or the rest of them. So that's one factor. The other thing is you are getting an attack by the reactionary right-wingers, the deflationists, right? The Austrian deflation freaks are interested in attacking the Fed because these characters prefer deflation. They believe they have money. They believe they will continue to have money, so they would like to see that money be worth more. And the way to get your money to be worth more is you have a general deflationary crash, and you're left sitting pretty in a sea of misery and chaos, and they don't really understand what's going to be waiting for them down the road. But they imagine that they'd be sitting there with a lot of money so they could buy up all kinds of assets, which today would cost them much more, and they can buy up people. They can buy up people because they'll be essentially starving, wretched people. They will have cut away the unemployment benefits, of course. So the Republicans, you can see the coming together of a pro-deflation party, and this, of course, is the Republicans and their Tea Party fanatic brigades. So they would like to have deflation, and they think this is advantageous to them. Of course, for the average person, deflation is an absolute catastrophe. Because if you have debt, right, the average household sitting there, $20,000, $30,000 in debt with student loans and mortgage loans and all these other loans, car loans, a heavy burden of debt. If you have deflation, that becomes much more onerous. That becomes worth much more. It's much harder to earn the dollars to pay down that debt. So that's what these reactionaries are actually going for. And there's also the other debate. The Fed is under attack because they pretend to care about unemployment, right? We'll talk about this in our final segment. We have the attacks coming this week from Pence, the reactionary Republican congressman, right-wing extremist from Indiana, and you've also got Will the Shill, right, the famous reactionary columnist from the Washington Post, a great friend of Conrad Black and those interests back in the 1990s. Anyway, I'm hooked in with all kinds of reactionaries. He also agrees that the mission of the Fed should not be to promote full employment. This was something that was added to the Fed mission statement, I believe, by the Humphrey-Hawkins Act in the late 1970s, right? The thing that also compels Helicopter Ben to go before the Congress and report on his activities periodically, which he'd rather not do. So this, of course, how ironic, right? We've just had an election campaign where the Republican mantra was jobs, 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 elect us and you'll have jobs, jobs, jobs. Once they get into power, oh, gosh, it looks much different. Now the reactionary Pence says, let's take that full employment out of the mission statement of the Federal Reserve and just leave in that they should fight inflation, in a sense. Promote deflation is what it means, right? If you take out the job part, you're saying that the mission of the Federal Reserve is to promote deflation and therefore increase the value of the money that I have in my storeroom, right? When you look at these reactionary arguments, so often they boil down to variations on the theme, my money, my money, my money, my money. So the Republican legions of greed with their Tea Party fanatic shock troops come into Washington, D.C., and immediately the tone changes here just in the last week. And let's give one example. We have the question of unemployment insurance, okay? This, by the way, when they say discretionary domestic spending, that includes unemployment benefits. It is part of the Social Security Act of 1935, something they hate Roosevelt for. They've never forgiven them. the new dealers for this one, but it's still there. And the problem is that it doesn't have its own dedicated automatic source of funding in the way that Social Security does. It's not really a legal entitlement in quite the same way that Social Security and Medicare are. So therefore, it's got to be periodically refunded, especially when you get into a depression of the type we have now. So these reactionary Republicans have now blocked the unemployment insurance from being refunded, an extension of benefits for people up to 99 weeks was before the House of Representatives, and it was defeated, and of course the reactionary Republicans take credit for this. These right-wing extremists, anti-worker, anti-people, the plutocratic party, they say, oh, this would cost $12 billion, and it's not offset by cuts elsewhere in the budget. Well, unfortunately, we've just heard that when it comes to the tax cuts for the rich, right, the plutocratic party on the Hill doesn't care whether tax cuts for the rich are paid for, $700 billion. That doesn't matter. But when it comes to the $12 billion to keep the unemployment benefits going, then it has to be paid for. What an interesting double standard of hypocrisy, duplicity, cruelty, and just benighted stupidity by these Republicans in the Congress. Now, the Democrats have done their part. They, instead of having it on a straight up or down majority vote, which they could have had, they did it based on a two-thirds rule because they want to first make the Republicans look bad if they can. They want the Republicans to all vote against it. So for various reasons of parliamentary procedure, that's how they did it. Now, the net result is that unless something is done on the unemployment insurance front, you will have 800,000 unemployed workers will lose their benefits in time for Thanksgiving at the end of November, November 30th. 800,000 Americans will become destitute, and 2 million will become destitute by the end of December, just in time for Christmas and New Year. So thanks to the reactionary Republicans, it's going to be 2.8, well, let's call it 3 million. 3 million Americans joined the ranks of the 3 to 4 million who are there already destitute because the Republicans think that the effect of unemployment insurance is to make you a thrall of the nanny state. You'll become a serf of big government, and you won't have that moral commitment to rely on yourself. And, of course, we just had the case of this one reactionary Republican, the guy elected here from the Eastern Shore of Maryland, and I have his name. His name deserves to live in infamy. He was upset. He said, look, if I don't get my unemployment, my full health care, I'm a new congressman, I have to wait 28 days. What am I supposed to do if I'm without insurance for 28 days? Little does he suggest that we've now got 50 million, 60 million Americans who don't have health insurance and won't. Back in a minute.